You know what that sound means? It's another episode of Game for a Movie where we ask, are you game for a movie? My name is Mike. Welcome to week 2 of Spoopy season, as we call it. Week 1 featured The Curse of Downers Grove, which is about my hometown, actually, surprisingly. This week is a little different, but of course, we're going to talk about that after we get into talking about what we are drinking. Today we are drinking Lightning Drops from Resident Culture Brewing right here in Charlotte. It is a fantastic IPA. Obviously, you know this by now if you've listened to the show a couple of times. I am definitely an IPA guy. I actually really love their can design. It is a black can. It feels really like textured and everything like that. Plus, it's just a cool looking can. I mean, it's called Lightning Drops. It has to be some kind of cool can, right? You can find this pretty much anywhere over Charlotte because, truthfully, it's one of those beers that everybody kind of loves if you like IPAs. So let's jump into the bad movie. This is our second bad horror movie for the month of October, what I call spoopy season. What everybody pretty much calls it spoopy season at this point. But usually during this time, I try to get as many horror movies as I can down. This one was supposed to be recorded and released last week. Things happen. And wouldn't you know it that my son decided he wanted to be born into this earth when I was supposed to be recording and sending it and everything like that. So, very good reasoning for why this episode is late. I have a beautiful baby boy. My wife is doing quite well, and so is our son. So, we are very happy getting into the swing of things and everything like that. I'm a little tired, I'm not going to lie. So, sometimes you may hear me trying to think of that correct word. It's just what's going to happen. Sorry, because I am just dealing with it. Obviously, if you've had a newborn before, you know what I'm going through. But I'm still going to try to give you the best show I can with the limited sleep I've had. And of course, because my son was born, we need to do something like the movie Godsend. Godsend, just to give you a brief synopsis of why this ties in like this, is about an 8-year-old boy who dies, and then a doctor promises the parents he can clone him and basically give him his whole life over again. So he would be born again, and he would live, and hopefully this time not die. So that is a brief synopsis of Godsend. Obviously, I'm going to get into more details, but a couple things before we get started. It was directed by Frank Callow and Nick Ham. Both of them pretty much have directed nothing else since. Nick Ham's got a couple projects here or there, but nothing too crazy. And Frank Callow's more of a producer and writer now, not really as much of a director. It was written by Mark Bomback. Mark Bomback is probably the most successful of these. He has 16 writing credits to his name, some of which are, he's got, obviously we start with Godsend. He has Live Free or Die Hard. He has Race to Witch Mountain and Unstoppable, the Total Recall remake, The Wolverine, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes. He did the Divergent series Insurgent and The Art of Racing in the Rain. He also wrote all 8 episodes of Defending Jacob, the TV miniseries that was on Apple Plus. So luckily, this guy didn't get stopped by this movie, Godsend. This movie was released April 30th, 2004. It is mystery thriller / horror. It is PG-13. It's about an hour and 42 minutes long. And the tomato meter, so it is a 4% critic score, a 20% audience score, highly rated as one of the worst horror movies of all time. Thus why we had to do it, of course. So that is a little bit of the background of Godsend. A couple fun trivia facts about this movie. Before the release of this movie, Lionsgate Films set up 2 official websites. One was the conventional site with the movie information, everything like that. And one was an email address and a phone number for the Godsend Institute, which is the cloning facility in this movie. And basically, if you were to call it, it had a recorded message giving the Institute's office hours, that kind of thing. A few parents who lost kids actually called this number trying to see if it was a real thing. I feel so bad for them. Luckily the studio started responding to them, explaining that it was a movie tie-in, so they didn't get their hopes too far up, hopefully. But yeah, that's a little rough, not gonna lie. And then one other fun fact about this, Robert De Niro stars in this movie, and he had originally planned on merely providing a brief cameo. However, the director Nick Hamm heard that De Niro wanted to be in the project, so he asked De Niro to participate in a few more scenes. These were all filmed within a week. Yeah, so that's all of De Niro's part is done within a week, the entire shoot of the movie. And De Niro later regretted this because his name was splashed all over the advertisements. And I'm not even joking if you like look at the poster and everything like that. Obviously, like the kid's face is a big chunk of it because it is about the kid being cloned, everything like that. But then the second biggest face on this thing has to be De Niro's. And he definitely is marked as like the and Robert De Niro, you know? So it's definitely very abundant that Robert De Niro's was used to sell this movie. It also stars Greg Kinnear and Rebecca Romaine Stamos, who is Rebecca Romaine now, but she was Rebecca Romaine Stamos at this point, and Cameron Bright plays the son. You've probably seen him in some things, I don't know, maybe here or there, but definitely this cast, you'd probably recognize those other three in a lot of other things. All right, let's talk about the details of this movie. So, Greg Kinnear plays Paul Duncan, and in the very beginning, he is running late for a birthday party. As he is running late, he decides to cut down an alley, and he gets held at knife point by one of his former students, but the guy recognizes him and lets him go. So we learn that Paul is a teacher, and that he's apparently a good teacher. Like, you know, everybody kind of likes him, even the ones that haven't gone down a good path at this point, especially since he gets held at knife point down an alley. And this never comes back, by the way. This is just to introduce the character and show that, like, oh, yeah, he's a teacher and he's a good teacher. Good for him. You know, that's all that happens in this part. So he gets home and his wife has been waiting for him. Her name is Jessie, and it's for their son, Adam. It is his 8th birthday party. Adam is played by Cameron Bright, as I said before, and Rebecca Romaine Stamos is Jessie. So to apologize for being late and everything like that, Paul gives Adam his present, and basically it's a red and white Letterman jacket that he got for his 8th birthday. I don't know. Even in 2004, that felt a little weird to me that you got a Letterman jacket at 8 years old, but, you know, whatever, I guess. That's the first scene, is his birthday and that kind of thing, and setting the stage about it is his 8th birthday, and he's got this Letterman jacket and everything like that. We also learn that the family has a job offer on the table. There's a chance for them to move out of the city and go to the suburbs, because basically they have offered Paul this teaching position in the suburbs. And Jessie is a photographer, so she can take it wherever she wants to go. They're kind of hemming and hawing about it, but the point of it is that Paul likes living in the city. That's what we learn, is he likes living in the city. So it's the next day, and Jessie agrees to take Adam to get a new pair of shoes. These are the Nike pumps. I love that we got some Nike pumps in this movie. Like, it's obvious Nike pumps and everything like that. He also gets a basketball. That's a pretty cool basketball. It's like a black basketball. So, you know, I actually think these are two things as an 8-year-old, I would want those. I don't think I'd want a Letterman jacket. I would like the Nike pumps and a basketball, but he also has his Letterman jacket as well that he's been wearing. So he goes outside to test them out while Jessie pays. The basketball rolls into the street and Adam goes to retrieve it. And wouldn't you know it, a car loses control, hits a median, and lands straight onto Adam. He gone. See Adam. So 8-year-old Adam, he's dead. Jessie is taking it so hard, obviously, because, I mean, wouldn't you? You just lost your 8-year-old son because of your negligence, pretty much. You just let him walk out in the streets, and in the busy streets of New York, you let him walk out there and play with the basketball on the street. That sounds like a you problem, kind of. So it's been a couple days, and they've been putting together the funeral arrangements. And as they're walking out, you can tell Jessie, she's like barely able to stand at this point. Paul is doing everything he can to keep her mobile to get through this because she is just so heartbroken right now. And they are approached by Dr. Richard Wells. That is Robert De Niro's character. and he taught Jesse in undergrad. So they do have a little bit of a history going back and everything like that. Well, Dr. Wells, he basically says, hey, I know a place down the road. Why don't we talk? I have a proposition for you. And even though they're both pretty distraught, they say, okay, we'll go listen to him. Why not? Because it is somebody that does have a past with Jesse. So why not? Dr. Wells specializes in fertility, and he offers them a chance to clone and rebirth Adam. Basically take the DNA, replace it into Jesse, and she would be able to rebirth him and have Adam all over again. And one of the quotes I put was, I've never done this before, but I know I can do it. Jessie is kind of on board because she just misses Adam so much and wants to bring him back. Paul, however, is like, I don't know about this. And especially because Dr. Wells explains this process is illegal, but if they agree to do it, basically he's going to move them 300 miles away and they need to sever all ties with their family. Because if anybody finds out about this, they find out that Adam's still alive, that is going to get them all, like, all of them are going to be are going to be recognized as, hey, you broke the law, you did this illegal thing, and you're all going to jail. So he needs them to move 300 miles away. However, Dr. Wells is going to pay for it all. Not only is he going to pay for it all, but basically he's going to buy them a house. He's going to get Paul a job at the local school. He's going to hook Jesse up with a dark room for photography. All of these things Dr. Wells is going to do. All they have to do is just agree. Paul is still definitely against it. Jesse wants them to do it. And one of the things I pointed out was that Paul didn't even want to move to the suburbs for a new job, let alone move 300 miles away from the city. But Jesse, of course, is feeling guilt. She wants Adam back. And even though Paul has suggested for trying for another child, they both agree that it was hard enough the first time to get pregnant, everything like that. With this is a little bit more artificial insemination, that kind of thing. So there's a little bit easier a time to make it happen and make it stick and everything like that. And especially because Jesse wants Adam back. She doesn't want a new baby. She wants Adam back. Paul decides that he's going to look into it. And he finds out that the institute that Dr. Wells works for is the Godsend Institute. I wonder why they call this movie Godsend. And he uses searchsite.web to take a look at the Godsend Institute. I love fake websites. So when in a movie there's a fake website or a fake phone number or something like that, it always takes me out of the movie, like always, because I love it so much. Searchsite.web or something like 555-55555, like that kind of stuff. That always gets me, where I'm just like, that's so good. So of course I had to make a note about searchsite.web. And then Paul calls his buddy Sam. They needed to talk about something else first. I don't exactly remember what, but then they get on the topic about the Dr. Wells, because Sam had heard of Dr. Wells and thinks that he's a genius. So Paul, after some convincing from Sam, even though Sam doesn't know what they were doing, Paul basically says, all right, fine, I'll do it. So they go to the Godsend Institute, and then they also get shown their new house. That's this huge, big house, and like, it's gigantic. It's this huge property on this huge piece of land, and I'm just sitting here going, where's like the kind doctor who will pay for a huge house in a new place to live for like us? Because I would love this. This would be amazing. I don't need I don't need my child to be reborn, but if it means that I could have this huge house and this big piece of land, I'd consider it. Flash forward, we go to an unnecessary childbirth scene. And to watch this a couple of days before I lived it in real life, this was surreal to me. Like, this whole thing was surreal to me. There was no need for this scene except to show that baby Adam struggled at first to breathe and then cries, and Jesse realizes that's the same thing Adam did the first time. So she's already like, oh my God, it worked, because it was like 40 seconds where he struggled to breathe and then he cried. All right, so after that unnecessary birth scene, we flash forward 8 years now, and it is Adam's 8th birthday again. And Dr. Richard is a part of their lives. He comes over. He has a gift for Adam. It turns out to be a kite. And basically he asks if Dr. Richard would fly it with him. So Adam goes out and flies the kite with Dr. Richard. Basically, all of Adam's friends are about to leave the party. So Paul calls Adam to say goodbye to his friends. And Adam looks at Dr. Richard and then looks back at Paul and doesn't go in. And it's like very obvious, like, I'm sorry, you definitely heard me. You definitely know what's going on, yet you're ignoring me for some reason. So it's already getting a little weird. Something's not quite right. And then there's this whole conversation, like a couple minutes later in the movie. Dad, I've been thinking. I don't think I like you so much anymore. And then he looks at him and goes, gotcha. It was a trick. But like, I don't know why you'd say something like that. You're just being a creepy kid just to be a creepy kid, I guess. But it shows that something is changing inside Adam. So assuming that night, Adam starts dreaming, and the scene of him dreaming and having this awful nightmare is also interspersed with a sex scene between Paul and Jesse. It's very strange because like you're supposed to be focused on the things that Adam's seen and everything like that, but then it goes back to them having sex, and it's just like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Adam is seeing his old self in the window of this, like it looks like a school, classrooms and everything like that. And he also sees these kids locked in these classrooms that look to be on fire. And so he starts like walking because of these dreams and everything, and then he collapses. Paul and Jesse see him collapse, and they're worried about him, and they talk to Dr. Richard, and basically Dr. Richard goes, well, he may be different now that he's crossed the age he died at. You know, we don't know. We've had this whole time scripted because you know what it's like year 0 to 8 years old. Now he might be different because we don't know. We're in uncharted territory and everything. So that's a good enough answer for at least Jesse and a little bit Paul too. I mean, he's at least happy with it and everything. One of the other things Adam saw in his nightmare was this drawing. And it's like a really creepy drawing, and he recreates it when he's out of the nightmare. The next day, Adam is biking home and basically cuts in front of Paul's car. And Paul gets like really mad at him because he just didn't want to get him run over again. And especially if it was him that did it, he just needs to be more careful and that kind of thing. And this kind of like triggers Adam, and he starts booking it away from Paul. And he goes into the woods near their house, and he finds this abandoned shed. And basically, he's in this shed in the middle of the woods, reaching out towards something, and he's sleepwalking again. Like this is sleepwalking again. It's not really him doing this. He's just kind of going through the motions, that kind of thing. And the thing he was reaching for, because Paul catches him and was like able to pick him up and take him back to the house, the thing that he was reaching for was an axe. So Paul is like, okay, we need to take him to a specialist. We need to do something. Something's not right here. Something's screwy, everything like that. But Dr. Richard's just like, it's nothing. We're good. Dr. Richard's office is some kind of like evil lair office. He has like a wood desk, files everywhere, dark red curtains. He sits in the dark and he like keeps clicking these like metal balls in his hand. He just kind of keeps turning them like that kind of thing. And while we see this, we also have a scene of Paul at school teaching the kids about DNA. And he has an epiphany about how certain genes are on or off, even though they are present. So like everybody has these genes, and basically came to the conclusion, well, what if some of these genes are on, some of these genes are off? So he has that idea, and basically tells the kids to read chapters 4 through 100 or whatever he says before he runs out. And, as all movies go, he just leaves his class with no repercussions. Nobody actually cares that the teacher just up and leaves. And Paul drives to the institute to talk to Richard. And Richard's basically like, yes, that's how we got Adam in the first place, is we turned on certain genes so that they were specific to Adam. Basically, Richard's saying, this is what we planned to. This is what we had. This is no big deal because this is what we always wanted. We turned on these certain things because this is what we wanted Adam to be. Paul just kind of drives home. He's not happy with that answer, but at the same time, he doesn't know what else to do at this point because he thought he had this answer figured out and that he could turn off, maybe with the help of Dr. Richard, turn off the sleepwalking one, sleep and the stuff he's seen and everything. When Paul gets home, Adam's kind of like not listening to him again. So Paul gets mad, screams at him, and grabs him like really hard. And Jessie starts getting a little nervous about Paul. Like everything's a little screwy now, where she just doesn't trust him the same, or at least she's a little weary of him. Paul is trying to convince Jessie to get a sleep expert, and he has been talking to Sam about a potential sleep expert. Sam, the guy that told him earlier that Dr. Richard is a genius, that they should do this and everything like that. And Jessie's kind of like, wait, you talked to Sam? Why'd you talk to Sam? We were supposed to sever all ties. Nobody's supposed to know we're here. This is not supposed to be what we do, anything like that. And he was just kind of like, well, I just needed to find somebody to try to help, and I found the sleep expert. Well, Jessie doesn't want to talk to the sleep expert because she just assumes that Dr. Richard is handling all of their problems. So Adam is now taking a bath, and he keeps hearing noises, including the door opening. So he keeps looking outside the shower curtain because he doesn't, taking the bath, he has the shower curtain pulled versus having it open. So he keeps like pulling the curtain, looking behind to see if the door is open, that kind of thing. And finally, at one point, the shower curtain pulls down and is stuck over him. And he's just kind of like freaking out. And then Paul like gets in, and the curtains magically back up, and Adam is fine. Also, Adam saw somebody under the curtain. He doesn't know who exactly, but he saw someone under the curtain. And so like Paul's trying to calm him down, and Adam says to him, something bad is going to happen. And Paul's like, I won't let anything bad happen to you. And Adam goes, not to me. Remember earlier how like Adam kind of said to his dad, like, I don't know if I like you anymore. This is starting to get a little like, okay, something feels like it's going to happen to the parents. Something's going to go weird. But so far, we don't know what's happening. We don't know if it's actually real, if it's just something that's happening in Adam's head, or if Adam is like literally suffering a psychotic break. So because Paul talked to Sam, Jessie goes over to talk to Dr. Richard, and basically they convene over lunch and wine. Dr. Richard makes a meal, and they split a bottle of wine at Dr. Richard's house. This is again interspersed with another scene, and it's Adam getting into a swinging contest with his bully Roy, because that's what all kids do. When he starts swinging, basically he gets really high and he starts spitting on the boys. And a teacher sees this, tries to stop him. She like takes him off the swing and is just like, what are you doing? Why are you spitting? And he spits on her too. So he gets in trouble with the principal because he's spitting now. And everybody knows he's such a good boy and everything like that. He really hasn't shown anything too crazy at school or anything like that. But all of a sudden it's like he's spitting on kids, and it's just a little weird. This is all interspersed while Dr. Richard is having Jessie at his house, making her dinner or making her lunch and having some wine. And I'm calling it now, Dr. Richard is trying something with Jessie. I don't know what, but something. He's also trying to convince Jessie to make sure that Paul doesn't leave, because this is still illegal, everything they've done and everything like that. So if Paul starts getting cold feet and wants to go talk to people, and somebody finds out, it is still illegal. They could still get in huge trouble and go to jail. So after this whole thing, Paul convinces Jesse that they should take Adam to a second opinion. So they take him to Dr. Lieber. And Dr. Lieber kind of is like a child psychologist, that kind of thing. And we learn about Zachary through Dr. Lieber. Zachary is the boy who lives in Adam's dreams. And not only that, Zachary wears a red jacket with white sleeves. It turns out to be the Letterman jacket. So we learn a little bit about it, not exactly everything. And so they're driving back from Dr. Lieber. They now know about Zachary and everything like that. And Adam starts having another terror while they're driving home. And Paul pulls over and is like pushing him for information because he just wants to try to get him through it. If he pushes him for information, basically Adam's going to find out the end of this and he's going to be able to get away from these night terrors. One of the things that Adam says is he sees this woman getting hit by a hammer by Zachary. And then at the end, because Zachary turns around and you see his face in the night terror, Adam asks, "Did I die?" And he might be starting to see his first life in his dreams. And Paul is very convinced of that. Jesse strongly disagrees. So it's the next day in class. Adam is doing the assignments his teacher says, and the teacher asks them to draw their house and their family, which Adam again draws the house on fire, and he signs it Zachary. A nice little interscene, basically to show, well, Zachary might be getting a hold of Adam now. After that day, he's going home, and he passes by the stream, and he sees Roy, his bully, and all the other boys that started bullying him, trying to cross a stream. And basically Roy is like, "Come on, you pussies, like, come cross the stream, blah, blah, blah. Come do it. Come on, you pussies. What are you doing?" And nobody wants to go with him. So Roy keeps going further up the stream, but the other boys are no longer there. Paul is driving home, and he just so happens to drive past the stream, and he sees Adam's bike, but he doesn't see anybody. And then we see Roy, he's looking at something in the stream, and he gets hit by something. We have no clue what, but he gets hit by something. Meanwhile, at home, in her dark room, all of Jesse's pictures are torn and messed up, including several with Adam's eyes cut out. So all of these pictures she has hanging are of the new Adam, but she has a box in the corner that's like a safe, and that safe has pictures of the first Adam, and those are untouched. So she's happy about it because at least new Adam doesn't know there was an Adam beforehand. And she does get kind of startled about the phone ringing. It's Roy's mom who is calling and said he still hasn't gotten home from school. Has anybody seen him? Of course, they haven't seen him. Paul doesn't think anything of it. He didn't realize anything at this point because he just saw Adam's bike by the stream. He doesn't know that Roy was also there. Adam has another night terror, and they're just like, okay, we need to bring him in for testing. So they bring him to Dr. Richard, and while he is dreaming, he admits the name Zachary Clark at St. Pius, and that all the other kids think that Adam is Zachary. To try to get him to snap out of it, Paul is yelling Adam. He's yelling Adam at the boy. And finally, to get him to snap out of it, Dr. Richard says Zachary Clark. And Adam just kind of comes to. Basically, he thinks that Dr. Richard is hiding something. So to get him to admit it, Paul threatens to tell the world what he has done, like what he has been doing at the Godsend Institute and everything like that. And Dr. Richard looks at him and goes, "What we've done, Paul." Realizing that he's kind of beat at this point, Paul gets his family and they start driving back. They start driving past the stream, and as they're driving past, the police are pulling Roy's dead body out of the water. Paul's now convinced that because he saw Adam's bike at the stream the other day, and because Roy disappeared and Roy is like one of his bullies, he's like, oh, Adam did this. And the only reason he got away with it is because the other boys saw Roy by the stream showing off, and they just think he fell in, hit his head or something like that. They don't think anybody did anything. So Adam gets away with it scot-free. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And by take a quick break, we're going to give a shout out to our friend Josh from Your Next Favorite Movie. So he's not been podcasting as much as he used to in the past, but his podcast was Your Next Favorite Movie. You can follow him on X/Twitter/whatever the fuck we're calling it at YNF Movie Pod. That's YNF Movie Pod, or Your Next Favorite Movie Pod. And Josh still plays around, even though he hasn't been podcasting as much lately. Still plays around, guesses on the guessing game, and we're always happy to give him a shout out because he's such a good dude. And so there you go, Josh. Congratulations on getting it. I know you haven't seen the movie, but you figured it out anyway. So congratulations. Here's your shout out for the movie Godsend. So congratulations, Josh. So now that Paul is convinced that Adam has killed a kid now, he needs to go to the city and figure out more about Zachary Clark, because all of his answers are in the city. It definitely is in the city. And so he drives to St. Pius, which is the school. It has been closed for a while, and Paul breaks into the school. Essentially, what Paul discovers is that the reason the school closed was there was a fire there that occurred, and it's just like in Adam/Zachary's picture that he's been drawing and his vision that he's been having. Including, there is a perfect copy of that drawing hanging on the wall in the school that just so happened to not burn down. So he's able to see this picture that his son has been drawing, that he's been recreating from his vision. So now he's figured out that St. Pius has been burnt down and everything like that. So he decides, okay, maybe I'll get more answers at Zachary Clark's house. What he finds at the house was that it was burnt down and it now has new owners that rebuilt it. Now, the new owners don't really know anything about the Clark family, especially Zachary, but they do know that there was a nanny who used to work there before it burned down. Her name's Cora Williams, and Paul is able to find her and go ask her some questions. So when he's talking to Cora, she was talking about how Zachary would be bullied all the time and he would start acting up. And then he started the fire. After the fire, Cora kind of sensed that this kid, something was not right with him, and that Cora knew she had to do something. So she tried to strangle him with the shower curtain and couldn't do it. Like she couldn't kill the kid. And I mean, yeah, totally understand that thought. I wouldn't be able to do it either. But Zachary didn't say anything about it. So Cora and Zachary just had this secret, but she just stopped kind of working for them. So she didn't come in the next day. That next day, Zachary killed his mother with a hammer and then set a fire in the house to hide any evidence. And he ended up dying in that fire. And basically, like, what about the father? Like, where was the father? And she goes, he was at the hospital, like always. And Paul's like, he was a doctor? And Cora goes, yes, but seemed more like a scientist to me. And this is when Tubi decided to take a commercial break. They had just broken the case, essentially. They now know that the father was a doctor or a scientist and wasn't there when the mother was killed with the hammer and when Zachary died in the fire. Paul is driving back from the city and he leaves a message for Jesse, basically saying, get away from Adam. Something's about to happen. Find Dr. Richard. But Jesse can't answer the phone because she is in the dark room where she found new Adam, who has the pictures of first Adam. He was able to open the safe and now is kind of like scaring Jesse. So she freaks out and she smashes the one light bulb in the room. So it's just in the dark while he's like having to talk with her. And we now learn that Zachary kind of has taken over. There's no more Adam. This is Zachary. Paul knows exactly where to find Dr. Richard, apparently, and drives to the funeral for the boy, Roy. Basically, Dr. Richard was there because he was trying to get the family to try to recreate Roy. and use the Godsend Institute and everything like that. Paul starts yelling at Dr. Richard, and Dr. Richard admits that he messed with the genes to try to bring Zachary back, and now he is reverting to Zachary. And this is all because Dr. Richard is the father who wasn't there when Zachary killed his wife slash his mother, slash Zachary's mother. And now he's trying to bring Zachary back. Paul says he's going to the police. And there's just, if he gets arrested, fine, whatever. But Dr. Richard is able to hit him with a large object and leaves him to die in the church because he set it on fire. And mind you, this church was just filled with mourners. Like, there was just 40 people at least that were in this church. They didn't have this conversation just alone after everybody had left the church. Basically, there was still a bunch of people in there, and they were having this conversation. Yet it's now empty, and it's on fire, and Paul is now left for dead while Dr. Richard kind of gets away with it. Adam slash Zachary now has run out of the dark room and just runs to the woods. Jessie is trying to follow him, and she just keeps yelling out Adam in like this really cheesy way. But she finds the shed, and she goes in. It's essentially a shot for shot of the Vision and Jessie in the shed, where basically she turns around to see Zachary slash Adam with a hammer about to kill her. Although this time Adam has an axe instead of a hammer. So we think that Jesse's going to die, but somehow Paul was able to regain consciousness and get all the way to the shed to catch the axe before Adam swings on Jesse. Catching the axe was able to break Adam out of his trance as Zachary. Now he was able to take control again. And then it just goes to 6 months later. There's news exposition of the Dr. Richard escaping and disappearing. The family is moving to a new house because they don't want to live in that town anymore. And because, let's face it, the only way they could afford it was because of Dr. Richard and everything like that. So they're moving to a new house. Adam is working with some new doctors who say this change will be good for him. And they also admit that he seems depressed. He seems depressed, but he's not this might be good for him. He might be able to snap out of it, make new friends, start all over as Adam with no more Zachary. So Adam's in his room kind of exploring and everything like that. And all of a sudden he hears the closet. There's something in the closet. And so he walks that way and he opens it up and there's nothing there. Cool. We're good. Adam has control again. And then he turns around and you see the red and white Letterman jacket pull him into the closet and close the door. I thought that was the end of the movie. I thought that was it. But no, whoever walks out, and we're left to question if it's Adam or Zachary in control now. And that's it. That is Godsend. Overall, this movie's, it's not good, obviously. Especially with a 4% and a 20%. It's a lot of ham-fisted dialogue. I think that's my main problem with it. It's just when everybody has these feelings, they just say what they're feeling instead of just, doing it and everything like that. There's no acting. There's all this speaking about it and then acting. So you know exactly what everybody's thinking, everything like that. That's my biggest problem with it. The acting is wooden. Nobody does a good job acting in this movie. And it's tough because a lot of these guys, especially somebody like Greg Kinnear, I actually really like as an actor. So it's tough to see him in this. I think he's trying, but it just comes across as so wooden because it's so melodramatic, his character the whole time. Every time there's something with him, it's so dramatic. There's no playing. There's no he always has something happen and he's just oh, God, Adam's fucked up. Oh, this is so bad. This is so bad. I got to do something about this. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to go talk to Richard. I got to go to the city. I got to go figure out who the Zachary kid is. There's always something where it's like, it's just one note. He's always the dramatic melodrama guy and everything like that. And maybe that's it for all these characters, kind of. The only one who probably has a little bit of depth is Adam, more so because we see scenes of him having fun, and then we see scenes of him struggling with the fact that Zachary is taking over. So it's tough because all of these characters are kind of like one note. Jesse is either just depressed, or she's skeptical, or she's scared. Like those, and that's the thing. It's all base level stuff with that. It's all base level emotions. There's no depth to these characters. And that's, I know I keep saying that's what the problem is and everything like that, but that's truly what it is. I think that's why this movie fails. I honestly think the idea is kind of fun. It's not like it's something we've seen before. It's something we'll probably constantly see, but I think it's a decent idea of a movie. That's another thing that works against it in this case, is the fact that it is a little basic. Like, you know what's kind of gonna happen. None of this felt surprising. The big reveal was supposed to be that the father of Zachary was Dr. Richard, and you always knew Dr. Richard had something to do with this. Like, there was always something about him. You never thought he was innocent. Like, you always knew whatever was going to happen at the end was going to be because of his doing, or he was going to do something sleazy. Because again, in the middle, I thought it was more so that he was going to like try to make a move on Jesse. I didn't really think it was going to be, oh, I tried to recreate my kid. But you always knew there was something that was going to be the moment when that happened. So that's one of the issues too, is that it really is, okay, you're on this line of this movie, and kind of the whole line of this movie, you know where you're going. Like, it's A to Z, and by part C, you know what's going to happen by part STU, you know, like that kind of thing. I don't know if that's a good way to explain it, but that's kind of what it felt like, where I knew something was going to happen with the doctor. Maybe I didn't guess it amazingly well, but I always knew there was going to be something with the doctor. You always kind of knew that Adam was going to be fine by the end of this. And truthfully, you kind of also thought that Jesse and Paul would be okay too. At least Paul, because Paul the whole time always had something where he's just like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. So you always knew that Paul was probably going to make it through. Jesse could have gone either way, but I thought she was pretty much safe. And that's the thing. I think it was predictable. Was it bad? Yes. Was it terrible? No. It's exactly like how The Curse of Downers Grove was. Like, the first 3/4 of the movie were pretty decent. Like, it had me kind of interested. This was kind of interesting. There was a decent enough idea, but the execution was just poor, and it was predictable, and that kind of made it fall a little flat. And then the performances on top of it didn't help anything. So overall, could have been worse. I don't think it deserves a 4%. 20%, probably right around there. That's probably a little more what it deserved. Just because, like I said, it was predictable. It wasn't scary. And that's part of another issue if you're going to call it a horror movie. There's no real scares in it. The only scary thing, I think, was the end with the closet. And that was more so because I wasn't paying attention anymore, and all of a sudden this just loud noise happened. But that one was a little more out of nowhere, and I was okay with that. I think that was probably something that I was a little more for, was the ending there. I think that was the best scare, but even that, like, it was kind of predictable on that too. So no real scares. Predictable story, wooden acting. Sucks because I do like Greg Kinnear a lot. Rebecca Romaine's fine. Robert De Niro, take him or leave him in certain movies. This one probably could have left him. And Cameron Bright as Adam/Zachary was pretty okay. Definitely could have been a lot worse. I said 20% Rotten Tomatoes score feels about right, so I guess that brings me to a 1 out of 5 genes turned on versus off. I guess that's fair, right? Because 1 out of 5 is 20%. Yeah, that's about right on the math. It wasn't great. It wasn't awful. Just kind of one of those things where it was there. This is a movie that existed. I can definitely see why a lot of people don't know about it. I can see why it fell through the cracks. And I can see why this is not one I'm going to watch again next year during Halloween time. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Godsend. I'm not going to recommend anybody see it. Like I said, it was fine. It was... They made this movie. I wish it would have been less predictable because I do think it's a fun idea, but overall predictable, and that's what hurt it. And that's what's going to constantly hurt it, is that it's predictable. You kind of know right away off the bat what you're going to get. So, yeah, that's week 2 of Spoopy season for the Game for a Movie podcast. If you have some bad movies you want to send our way, find us everywhere at Game for a Movie. We are taking bad movie suggestions always, because I always write them down, even if I don't get to them right away. We have another Spoopy episode coming out next week or the week after. Like I said, I'm dealing with a newborn, so my production is a little more slowed down. I'm trying to get back on a rhythm, but I do have at least 4 movies planned, even if it falls sometime into November. The next one, I got Claire to watch with me, and that's kind of something that I'm shocked by. But yeah, so she might hop on as well. We'll see. I might get her thoughts on the next one we did. I'm looking forward to that one because it has some fun on it. So yeah, we'll talk about that one for next week's episode. But thank you guys for tuning in to listen to me talk about Godsend. I've been your host, Mike, on the Game for a Movie podcast, where we ask, are you game for a movie? I'll see you next time.